Well, I have a text very long, but I try to synthesize this to be short. According with the Metropolitan Sisulas, Thomas Aquinas clearly distinguished the natural political order founded on reason, as say Vittorio, and the supernatural religion order founded of the grace and the prophecy, say. He opposed, to some extent, medieval interpretation of philosophers who attributed an essential political role to the religion, especially the religion of the revelation. And say, the society of man, insofar as it is ordered to the end which is eternal life, can only be concerned by the justice of the faith, whose principle is prophecy. But since this end is supernatural, both the justice ordered towards this end and the prophecy, that is his fundament, which is the principle and fundament, will be supernatural. In concretely, the justice by which human society is governed and ordered towards the good of the city can be sufficiently archived by means of the principles of the jus naturale implanted in men. That is not to say that the religion has nothing to do. The religion is the inspiration, is the prophecy, is the utopy. But also in the idea of Christ, in the Beatitudes, there are two considerations: the Beatitudes, final Beatitudes, and the Beatitude that we can arrive here with the natural justice. I think this is important to clarify the problem of the refugees. So the first thing is the inalienable right of the person. The person has some rights in the order of nature that are completely inalienable. And this is the natural law, but we can say this is something that is before the juridical order and is also the fundament of juridical order. And Thomas defined this as participation of the eternal law in the rational creature. And go in this tradition, he distinguished between primary natural law and secondary natural law. So this is also very important for me in the application for the refugees. The primary natural law say that not have any indication and say that all the goods of the earth are for all. No, and it's like the dress, this Thomas said, we not born with a special dress, but this is a consequence, a reflection. So the other things that recognize is made by this secondary indication of the natural law. Maybe, I don't know if the limits of the countries belong to this secondary the secondary things of the natural law. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. I think that are completely arbitrary. So many people today speak about each person have the right to have citizen of the global world, and maybe this is true. But anyway, now the primary natural law is followed by the conclusion that reason order to the common good that are called law of nation. In that time, jus gentium, ever by some contemporary author addressing human rights. Thus, private property, social condition, and clothing were not introduced by nature, but by men reason as useful to human life. If we apply St. Thomas' threefold distinction between primary and secondary law to the issues of migration, we could say that science, fundamental freedoms, and the common distinction of goods pertain to primary natural law, so those each person freedom to migrate. Likewise, just as the variation of social condition and private property pertain to natural law, secondary, so those the legal structuring of the willingness to welcome migrants in the life of the common good. This criterion of the common good for the regulation of migration flows is one of the indispensable conditions that human reason considers necessary to make sure that migration statements are carried out with the necessary guarantee of respect for the dignity of the human person. In this interpretation, the law of nation and modern human rights belong to natural law because man is by nature a social animal, Aristotle explained in the Politics. On the contrary, the provision derived from the natural law as secondary determination belong to civil law, which a nation determines according to its needs. With respect to the common good, Thomas is also inspired by another principle of the philosopher, and this is the principle that follow Pope Francis when he speaks, especially in Laudato Si, when he explains the order, all things are ordered for all people. This is the first principle of the social doctrine of the Church. Need to regulation. It's clear that we need some regulation. The citizens of nations intervene in migration issues in different capacities and express different points of view, whether in relation to migrants and the government's employees, who often bring immigrant workers, credit institutions, trade unions, or whether in relation to the rules of the recipient's countries, charities, public opinion, or the media. All these people can have some intervention in the regulation. But it's clear that this regulation not is for the fundamental rights, that we see and we can have here a conflict of duties. With regard to individuals and especially the group disadvantaged, like the refugees, migration in search of survival is a right that cannot be denied, because the preservation of one life is a primary natural right that the human being shares with all living beings, as we have seen. St. Thomas Aquinas reflects the Christian tradition and guides this tradition, say, in case of necessity, all things are common. And this is the more important principle, as I say, of the social doctrine that says, as part of the natural law. The goods of the earth, including those in the hands of private property, or that are the property of the other nation, and land itself, water, the Pope declared water a common good, have a common origin and an universal destination, which is to serve for the sustenance of all human beings. For this reason, St. Thomas Aquinas say that when we are in necessity, if we take something that belongs to the other, belong to also to the person to take this, because the natural law is that all things belong to the human being. So basically, we have here, and this is the substance of my intervention, we need to make distinction between some fundamental rights that are previous of the juridical rights, also for the migrants, like give to eat, give work, give something to can live, and the other things that are, for example, the citizen or the other kind of document that we can have more and more in a in a gradual form. So I want to synthesize and to finish to say, we can say that this moral political conception of the common good according to justice lead theologians, philosophers, sociologists, and jurists to analyze its component vis-à-vis the problem of contemporary migration. Thus, they have identified three levels that are the source of three types of rights that clarify the ethical view on the situation of migrants. Primary rights concern issues related to existence or subsistence and conditions other related issues such as accommodation, food, housing, security. Pope Francis addresses these issues in Lampedusa in a very clear form. And I have the text. Moreover, the Pope Francis further explained this concept in Lesbos, where he spoke about the Good Samaritan and the largest humanitarian catastrophe since the Second World War. Let's call these rights the rights of people, referring to the legal guarantees of migrants in the primary rights, including the funding of institutions favorable to what Paul VI called the organic participation of the people in the will of the nations, of the various social forces in managing a community. More precisely, this Pope, Paul VI, wrote in the address to the Assembly in the International Labour Organization, "Your vocation is a freely organized and social discipline and organic participation in the responsibility and in the profit of the work for all people." Finally, there are responsibilities related to protecting, examining, and developing the values that underpin the deep, stable unity of the society, and more fundamental, create an horizon of public peace understood precisely as St. Augustine, tranquillitas in order. So the question of values, the question of more fundamental constitution of the nation that are the customs and the values real transcendent. The application of these three categories, survival, development of economic and social goods, and communion with the deep values, including religion ones, require a careful look at the various aspects of the issues. Some aspects are of the rather cultural order, because not all nations' traditions confer the same importance to practical wisdom, democracy, and dialogue as the Western civilization does today, after a long history journey of configuration of these same values. Other aspects indicate that the structure of social relations at job categories is also evolving, as I say in this moment with values, despite being basically stable. Such observations are important in judging the attitude to be taken vis-à-vis migratory flows, and especially vis-à-vis the degree and timing of social and cultural acceptability. Pope Francis also speaks about this, especially in his conference in Sweden in 2016, and especially in the last speech, that is the address to the diplomat corps, and he speaks about the necessity of consider these different degrees, and in the end, he speaks about the integration. He called this last degree integration. So I think that we need to have this reflection. Each country needs to have this reflection, but also all the countries, and especially United Nations, need to indicate this difference in the question of migrations and in the question in general of refugees. Thank you very much.